Look at the back of your hand right now. Whatever color you see that shade, that tone, it feels like yours. It feels permanent, like something you were simply born with and will carry forever. But your skin color is not a fixed truth. It is a compromise, a negotiation your ancestors made with the sun over hundreds of thousands of years. And the story of how that negotiation played out is far stranger than anything you were ever taught in school. To understand why ancient humans lost their dark skin, you have to go back. Not 1,000 years, not 10,000. You have to go back roughly 2 million years to the African savanna, where your earliest human ancestors were walking upright for the first time in evolutionary history. Here is what most people get wrong immediately. Those earliest ancestors did not have dark skin. They had almost no skin pigment at all, because they did not need it. Your ancestors 2 million years ago were covered in thick, dark body hair, the same kind of hair you see on chimpanzees today. That fur was their first layer of protection against the sun. The skin underneath it was pale, pink, almost translucent, like the skin you might find on the inside of your forearm. Then something changed. Something that altered the course of human biology forever. Around 1.2 million years ago, your ancestors began losing their body hair. Scientists are still debating exactly why. One leading theory, developed by evolutionary biologist Nina Jablonski at Penn State University, suggests the shift was tied to endurance running. As early humans began to hunt by chasing prey over long distances in the brutal midday African heat, they needed a way to cool down fast. Hair traps heat. Sweat on bare skin cools the body. So over time, natural selection began stripping away the fur. But that created a catastrophic new problem. Without the protective layer of hair, the skin beneath was suddenly exposed to something it had never faced directly before. Ultraviolet radiation. Raw, unfiltered African sun beating down on pale, vulnerable skin every single day. Ultraviolet radiation does something most people never think about. It destroys folate. Folate is a B vitamin that lives inside your cells and plays a critical role in DNA replication. When UV rays penetrate pale skin, they begin breaking down the folate in your blood. And when folate drops too low, the consequences are severe. Miscarriages, birth defects, neural tube malformations in developing embryos. Infertility, in short, low folate, does not just harm you, it destroys your ability to reproduce. This is the moment skin color became a matter of life and death. Your ancestors who happen to carry genetic mutations producing more melanin, the dark pigment that absorbs and neutralizes UV radiation before it can reach the deeper layers of skin, survived. Their folate stayed intact. Their pregnancies carried to term. Their children were born whole. The ancestors who stayed pale died off faster, had fewer surviving children, were quietly erased from the genetic line. This is how natural selection works, not through dramatic events. Through the quiet accumulation of tiny reproductive advantages repeated across thousands of generations until an entire population shifts. Within a few 100,000 years, the dominant human skin tone across sub-Saharan Africa was a deep, rich brown-black, heavily melanized, optimized for survival under the most intense UV radiation on the planet. Jablonski and her colleague George Chaplin mapped this correlation precisely: the darker the average human skin color, the closer to the equator the population originated. The relationship is nearly perfect. Skin is not a cultural artifact, it is a map. It tells you exactly where your ancestors lived and how much sun they faced. So that is how dark skin appeared. But why did some populations eventually lose it? The answer is vitamin D. And it is just as dramatic as the folate story, but in reverse. Around 60 to 70,000 years ago, modern humans began migrating out of Africa. They followed coastlines, crossed land bridges, pushed into territories that no human had ever set foot in before. And as they moved north into Europe, into Central Asia, into the dim, gray latitudes far from the equator, something unexpected happened. The sun became their enemy in a completely different way. Not because there was too much of it, but because there was almost none. In the northern latitudes during winter, the sun hangs low on the horizon. The UV index drops close to zero for months at a time. And here is the problem. Your body needs UV radiation to synthesize vitamin D inside the skin. Vitamin D controls calcium absorption. Calcium builds bones. Without vitamin D, children develop rickets, soft, deformed, brittle bones that shatter under the weight of a growing body. Adults develop osteomalacia, where bones thin and fracture under ordinary daily use. A body without vitamin D does not hold itself together. But darkly pigmented skin, so brilliantly designed to block UV radiation near the equator, was now blocking the very UV rays that the body desperately needed to make vitamin D. The same shield that protected your African ancestors from folate destruction was now starving their descendants of something equally essential. Natural selection began running the same process in reverse. Individuals who carried mutations producing less melanin could absorb the weak northern UV rays more efficiently. Their skin was paler, and so the little ultraviolet light that existed in winter months could penetrate deeper and trigger vitamin D synthesis. Their bones stayed dense, their children survived. And over thousands of years, populations in Europe and Northern Asia gradually lightened. Researcher Eske Villerslev at the University of Copenhagen led ancient DNA studies that revealed something startling. The lightening of European skin did not happen all at once, and did not happen as early as scientists once assumed. Early European hunter-gatherers who arrived on the continent around 40,000 years ago still carried genes for relatively dark skin. The full shift toward pale European skin was still ongoing as recently as 8,000 years ago, driven partly by the spread of farming, which replaced the vitamin D that hunter-gatherers had previously obtained from eating fatty fish and animal organs. Think about what this means. People living in Europe 8,000 years ago farming, building settlements, already practicing early forms of civilization were still genetically darker than modern Europeans. The pale skin you associate with Northern Europe is not ancient. In evolutionary terms, it is almost brand new. And this raises a question that sits uncomfortably at the center of everything modern society has built around skin color. If pale skin is simply a vitamin D adaptation that appeared tens of thousands of years after dark skin, and if dark skin is simply a folate adaptation that appeared in response to hair loss, then skin color is nothing more than a vitamin regulation system, a biological thermostat, adjusting the body's ability to absorb or block ultraviolet radiation based on where your ancestors happen to live. That is the entire story. That is all it is. 2 vitamins, 2 pressures, 1 species adapting to survive wherever it went. And yet this adaptation, this ancient, practical, unglamorous calibration system became the basis on which entire civilizations built hierarchies, constructed laws, determined who had power and who did not, who was fully human and who was not. The history of human skin color prejudice is the history of people assigning meaning to a vitamin D filter, of treating a biological thermostat as if it were a signal of intelligence, worth, beauty, or destiny. Anthropologist Sarah Tishkoff at the University of Pennsylvania has spent years studying genetic diversity in African populations and repeatedly emphasizes that Africa contains more genetic variation in skin color than the entire rest of the world combined. There is no such thing as a single African skin tone. There never was. The continent where humans first evolved contains the full spectrum of human pigmentation, from the darkest recorded skin tones on Earth to some of the lightest found anywhere outside of Europe. The idea of a monolithic racial skin color, applied to entire continents, has no genetic foundation whatsoever. So here you are. You looked at the back of your hand at the start of this video. Maybe you saw something dark, maybe something pale, maybe something in between. And you probably felt, on some quiet level, that the color you saw was simply you, something fixed and fundamental. But it is not you. It is a record. It is a message your body is carrying forward from ancestors who lived under a particular sky, at a particular latitude, eating particular foods, facing a particular sun. Your skin is the biological memory of every place your family has ever been. And underneath it, in the folate in your blood and the vitamin D in your bones, the same ancient negotiation with the sun is still happening right now, in every cell of your body, just as it has been for 2 million years. The color you saw on the back of your hand is not who you are. It is where you came from. And once you understand that, it becomes almost impossible to look at it the same way again.